I got this phone call from an R&D manager. He said, Niels, he called me on a January day. He called me, Niels, we have a QA problem. And if somebody says, we have a QA problem, usually in my mind that translates, we have a testing problem. Because testers think that they do QA. Why do I see? Oh, I see only half of it, but you see everything. Okay. So, he said, we have this big pile of stuff to test. One senior tester just left the company because he went to the boss. He said, at the neighbors, I can get 50% more salary. I want more salary. Then the boss said, you don't get more salary, so he left. So there was only one senior tester and one junior tester left. And 15 developers putting stuff on the pile all the time. And he said, well, we have to do all these regression tests. If we deliver something and they change anything, we have to do all the regression tests, whatever that is. And they take 15 days each. Apparently not much automation there. So, and his question was, should we hire more testers? I said, let's first see the problem before we are throwing testers to it. Because, you know, adding people to a late project makes it later. So, can we do something about it? Can you help us? He asked. I said, I think so, because I get questions like this, and usually within a day we have solved it. So I think I can help you. His next question was, how do you know? Yeah. So, well, how do I know? I have this secret magic bullet. I mean, silver bullets don't exist, but magic bullets do. Yeah? And that's the old Deming cycle. Who knows the Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act? Who does not? Well, you're kind of fooling me. Check again. Who does? Who does not? Again, that's better. Yeah? Always check the statistics. So, plan, do, check, act. We plan, and the planning is twofold. What to achieve and how to achieve it. Then we do according to the plan, which means the plan must be doable, and we must follow the plan. But assume we did that. In the check phase, we can check, was the result according to plan, and the way we achieved it according to plan. If yes, can and should we do it better? If no, how can we do it better? And then we come to the act phase. The act phase is, what are we going to do differently the next time? Because if we don't do anything differently, the result will be the same. Otherwise, statistics wouldn't exist. Yeah? So, the intuitive cycle that we see every day is not plan, do, check, act, but it's pull, do, pull, do, pull, do. I can't call it plan, so I call it pull. Because people think, what's the next thing I have to do? And they jump into it. Done, next thing, jump into it. Next, etc. Intuitive cycle. Automatically reacting on the situation. Now, if our intuition would be perfect, everything that we would do would be perfect, right? Not everything we do is perfect, so apparently, sometimes our intuition points us in the wrong direction. So, instead of doing pull, do, pull, do, pull, do, let's plan, carry out the plan, check what comes out of it, and change. And the change is what causes the evolution. That's why we call this the evolutionary approach. Yeah? Now you can say evolution in nature may be slow, but we're humans and we can imagine the impact of our change. And that's not always positive, but by cleverly thinking, yeah, we can move evolution to move in the right direction and not just randomly. So this is my magic tool, which usually helps us out to very quickly come to better results. The only problem is that the act often is forgotten. Yeah, we pull, do, and even if we decided to do it this way, even we check, Even we check. We know in our mind that we should do something differently, but we are so busy. So let's take that act, and what are we going to do differently? So instead of complaining out of a problem, stuck in the check phase, let's move to doing something about it, going to the act. So that's what we did, specifying and quantifying the problem. So they knew they were in trouble. We had too much work. But when I asked how much is too much work, they gazed at me and they said, So I said, let's quantify the problem first before we start doing something about it. So where's the projector? I mean, this was some years ago when not everybody had the projector. So after a few minutes, they had the projector installed. And I connected Excel to that. And I asked the tester, who was sitting there, asked, what is the contents of that pile? What are the things that you're looking at? So he prepared this meeting very well, I must say. So he came up very quickly with these things. These are, I mean, a little bit anonymized, but this is the real Excel that happened there. So I called them just packages instead of the actual names of the things. Okay. Then I said, how much time do you need, or your tester team, you and your junior tester, need to do these tests? Well, a lot of time. I said, no, how much? So I taught them before, these guys, how to do proper estimation. Proper estimation meaning just sufficient to make better decisions. Yeah. So he came up with these numbers. And we added them up, and we come to 106 days of testing. 106 days is about half a year. Customers were already leaving this company, going to the competition. So the existence of the company was on the line because they thought bad products take a long time to do something about it. So this was not acceptable. So now we had quantified the problem. The next step is, what can we do about it? So I said, let's empower you. You've heard that word? Empower the developers or the team. Now, let's empower this tester. I told this tester guy, the developers stop developing, and you get the whole company at your disposal. If you need the CEO to do something for you, I make sure he does it. Company's on the line. So, imagine that you can have anybody do work for you. All the developers can help you if you make them help you. How much time do you still need to do that? For instance, doing some testing yourself, instructing developers to do whatever they can do for you, and checking the results that come out of it. So you still need time. Okay, he did the next estimation. First we took one of the packages and cut it into smaller pieces, because these long numbers, 17, 8, 14, 11, do we really have to wait for 2 weeks before we can give something useful to customers? Or can we have smaller things that we can much faster give to them? So, just as an exercise, we first took that package 8 and cut it into some of the pieces. Not all of them, but it was just the exercise. So then, as alternative, how much time would you need if you can have anybody help you? So, quick estimations in days, 47 days, which is 9 or 10 weeks. Bit better than half a year, isn't it? And just as a sanity check, what the junior tester could do and what developers could do, just some numbers. They don't have to be exact. It's just getting a feeling about what we are talking about. No numbers, you have no clue. With some numbers, somebody can say that number is not right. Yeah, we can talk about it. Okay. Then I said, who is waiting for these things? Yeah? Which customers are waiting and don't get something from us because you seem to be the bottleneck? You also, everybody's a tester here? Yeah. Are you the bottleneck at the end? No. The bugs are the bottleneck. But you know that. Okay. So customers are waiting, and he put some names. I tried to anonymize them a little bit. Yeah. And then we looked at that, and he said, okay, who can we maybe serve tomorrow? Make happy tomorrow already. Yeah. So this was the 22nd of February, and there was one customer, he needed 1 day to do some tests, and then, so I said, just 1 day. I heard about full regression tests, 15 days. He said, no, I know what this is about, and I need only 1 day, because I also told him, you still are responsible that if we send it to the customer, it works. No dilution of quality. What we deliver simply works. So, which customers, most important customers, yeah, can we help as quickly as possible? And we don't have to give every customer immediately everything they need, because they also need time to absorb what we're giving them. So we can select one customer to give one part, and the same customer, a little bit later, give another part, in the meantime helping other customers. So, I don't see it, but you see it there. We already put some dates. Okay, in 2 days we can help that customer. Another 2 days, yeah, etc. So that was just a sketch as it was on the whiteboard, just as an exercise how to attack such a problem. Then I have a technique I call timeline, which is 8 or 10 weeks, and in this case 47 days, about 9 or 10 weeks. Put a timeline on the whiteboard, and there he could, based on this table, say in which order to help these customers. Checking the priority. Maybe some customers were screaming all the time, but in the end not buying products. So who cares about them? Yeah? The company's life is on the line, so most important customers, etc. So based on those thinking, in which order are we going to get rid of this pile? Okay. So you can imagine that giving this tester the whole company at his disposal, letting him decide all these things, that the smile, sorry, that's this one, that the smile went from here already, a little bit that way. Okay, what's the result? Tester empowered. Actually, the whole pile was gone in 9 weeks, actually. Full regression test. I said, what is full regression testing? Does anybody know what that means? Well, I asked him. He said, well, for this part of software, all the tests we ever made, we have to run again. You've heard that? Okay. Now, at that moment, a developer was sitting in the room, and he said, that's bullshit. He said, you know, all the tests we ever run on this covers about 30% of what it does. So what's the point? So at that moment, I suggested, let's just scratch this rule. Full regression test shall be done every time. You decide, empowered as you are, what you have to do with your responsibility to deliver things that simply work for the customer. So, since then, the testers kept up with development all the time. just this 1.5 tester suddenly become much more efficient. Kept up. Customers systematically becoming happy, amazed what happened with this company suddenly, and they returned. A year later I was in this company and they told me, Niels, you know what happened after this exercise? In the past year, the turnover of this product went up 70%. Increased revenue. 2 years later, he was promoted to product manager and still coaching his successors in testing. Yeah, so this is just simple exercise, isn't it? But just not saying we are in trouble. No, what are the facts? Quantifying the facts so that we know what we're talking about. And then doing something about it. So, what is the technique? Cut the work into chunks and don't make it too detailed because that's waste. Yeah? Estimating, then adding up. And the interesting thing is, if the estimates are very coarse and not very exact, as long as they are on average are okay, the sum is quite exact. Just simple mathematics. Yeah? So don't be afraid to coarse estimates. So we add up, see the problem, and the next step, what can we do about it? Well, you know the story now. That's what we did about it. So what do we do if we see we're not going to make it on time? Because usually in any project, most projects take longer than we think, right? So in any project, when you do such an exercise, you will see we need more time. But failure to me is not an option, and deadlines to me are sacred. So, real deadlines, I mean. Yeah. So, what are the options we have if we see we cannot do it on time? The first 4 are the deceptive options. They don't work. They make it worse. Yeah? So we are talking about how much time do we need from now till a deadline. Yeah? If it easily fits, we can just work. If it exactly fits, it probably won't. And if it doesn't fit, we really know we're in trouble. What is the value still to earn to the time still available? And when I made this picture, the first time I put that lower bar beyond the deadline, and then I realized after the match you can't score a goal. So what's the point? We started later, or we have to change our ways. So the deceptive options, the first 2 is hope. Yeah, maybe it will still be on time. The fatalistic. Yeah. Or we have to succeed. Let's go for it. Well, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Who works overtime from time to time? Never, ever work overtime because you're fooling yourself and your boss. Yeah? Never, ever. 40 hours of work is already heavy. If you work more, you make even more errors than you make normally. So in the end, you only work overtime to correct the errors you made because you were working overtime. That's the short story. So never, ever do it, so that once or twice a year, you have the energy to do it when it's really necessary. Moving the deadline. You know Parkinson's law? People fill the time available. If you move the deadline, you have more time available. And you will fill it. So the only way you may move the deadline is towards you. Because that's more efficient. And student syndrome, well, you know, as a student, when you had an exam, when did you start working hard? 3 weeks before or the last day? As late as possible, exactly. So these work against, yeah? I have a few seconds, but almost finished. Yeah? So this is one that we have to cope with. It's the myth of the man-months. You know, if we have a 12 man-months or person-months project, yeah, 6 people can do it in 2 months, 4 people in 3 months, and 2 people in 6 months. That's how we calculate our time, do we? Well, that's a fairy tale. It's the myth of the man-months. It's not like that. Putnam measured projects, and he found that the fastest project is 2 or 3 people. The cheapest project is 2 or 3 people. The fastest project is 5 to 7. And beyond 7, it explodes. We've heard that already in the presentation earlier. Yeah? Because you have to pay more and it takes longer. So 5 to 7 is probably an economic optimum because time to market is very important. And that's what we call the 9 mothers area, where some managers think if you take 9 mothers, you can make a baby in 1 month. Some things simply take a certain amount of time. So the last one is saving time, and that's the really low-hanging fruit. Because half of what people do in projects later proves not to have been necessary. If after the work you see it wasn't necessary, the time is already wasted. If before the work you see you're going to waste the time, you still can decide not to waste it. Simple. Yeah, and you can save time on many ways, in a better product, in a better how you organize it, etc., etc., etc. Continuous improvement. And time boxing, moving the deadline, having a deadline, because then Parkinson's law doesn't work too much. Yeah? And then, have you heard that? Continuous elimination of waste. That's what we do. So I'll skip this. This was just one element of a lot of things we can do to improve projects. And now we can say, what has this to do with testing? Well, I showed how a tester could use the same thing I taught before to developers. So you can download this presentation from my website, or later also from the conference website. And even you can read the story in a small booklet you can download from my website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see other questions. Hopefully it's going to be explained. Yeah. Oh, I can't read it because it's cut. Okay, how can we deal with ever-changing customer requirements in case of testing, in case of PDCA cycle?
PDCA, okay. Check, we get change requirements. Act, what are we going to do about it? Basically, that's the answer. I mean, you guys are clever enough to come up with ideas. Once we move you from the check, all these requirements are coming in, blah, 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 blah. What are we going to do about it? And then people are clever enough to come up with ideas. That's actually the short answer. I mean, well, one of the reasons why people come with change requirements, that's a long story. We don't have time for that. But we can discuss about it later. I'm here, even until weekend.
Okay, great. So the next question, I try to read it from here. With market changing fast, how long ahead do you think you can plan? Is it possible to apply this methodology in fast-growing companies?
Yeah. I've done it, yes. I've done it also in startups and everywhere, in startups or all the companies. This immediately, almost immediately, in a few weeks, people can change and spend 30% less time delivering better results, which means they have 50% more time to do productive work instead of unproductive work. So, yes, you can. I have 3 elements of it. Weekly, we decide what we have done by the end of the week and how to do that. It's a timeline of 5 days. We have a delivery cycle. What will we have delivered after 2 weeks? You saw that on the timeline. and then timeline 8 or 10 weeks. Anything beyond the horizon, that will change anyway. But every 2 weeks, you can start all over again. Yeah.
Okay. Short final question. What do you mean by real deadlines?
Really interesting. Yeah. Well, if it has to be in the shop at Christmas, if you don't have it in the shop at Christmas, you need it only the next year. Or in the case of a parking system, there is an exhibition about parking systems every 2 years in Amsterdam. So if you don't have a parking system, a new parking system to show at that show, your marketing has to wait another 2 years. So deadlines are used. I hear from people that deadlines are usually the most important requirements. How come that we never meet deadlines? How come that we treat all the other requirements more importantly as the most important one? Isn't that weird?
Okay, thank you. Please vote in the app because you can win an electric scooter. Thank you for this presentation. It was a great one, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.